We are now in the room devoted to Ravnikar's monuments and memorials. This room, curated by my co-curator Susanna Campeotto, is an opportunity for us to explain when Ravnikar came to his own, so to speak. Ravnikar's first projects, even before the Second World War, still clearly showed his attempts to breach the distinction between his first formative influence, Jože Plečnik in Ljubljana, and his wish to become a truly modernist architect. This wish resulted in Ravnikar going to Paris in 1939 and joining Le Corbusier's studio for half a year. So, for instance, the modern gallery in Ljubljana still clearly shows the elements that we can link to Plečnik's approach to architecture and the elements that link to Le Corbusier's approach to architecture. But after the Second World War, when the regime changes, where Slovenia becomes a part of a socialist Yugoslavia, which means for architecture specifically that it gains new tasks of changing the landscape, but also of being mobilized in the project of creating a different society, Ravnikar gains an opportunity to breach this distinction between Plečnik and Le Corbusier and form his own, specifically Ravnikarian, if I may say so, approach to architecture. Both influences are still present, but this is not just a pure synthesis. With monuments created in 1950s, Ravnikar creates a specific architectural landscape poetics that is the basis for his future architectural and urbanist projects. We start this room by superimposing two very different pieces of information. One is Ravnikar's article about Lojzes Spacalj's art, so abstract art of 1940s and 1950s, of which Ravnikar wrote a critique, a very favorable critique in 1951 article in a newspaper that everyone read at the time. On the other hand, there is Spacalj's own painting of one of Ravnikar's memorials. So this is an opportunity for us to show the dialogue between the two artists, but above all, to show that Ravnikar's main source of inspiration for these memorials was purely artistic. The question of abstraction, of geometry, of breaching the conventions of building memorials into something completely different, into a sort of landscape art of its time. As before the Second World War, even after the Second World War, most memorials, both in East and West of Europe, are still designed in a very classical way. I'm talking about verticals, I'm talking about monuments filled with muscular figures of fighters with guns and memorial inscriptions. Ravnikar's memorials are completely different. They use the abstraction to breach this archaic way of creating 19th century style memorial and creating an interesting 20th century modernist synthesis of individual and collective memory. In times that was only a couple of years after the suffering of the Second World War, Ravnikar's memorials, almost exclusively devoted to the victims rather to the victors, show this synthesis of individual that has fallen into the fighting, or individual that has been shot by occupying forces, and the collective formative experience of the Second World War for the whole community. And the strictly geometric starting point that links to the natural landscape, that shows this connection between archaic role models and modernist treatments of this subject. For instance, the Rab memorial could be ruins of a city from antiquity, and yet it shows in its detailing that it was created in the middle of the 20th century, is Ravnikar's specific poetic way of creating something completely new that could have been in that landscape for millennia.